Have you ever noticed that God tends to call people during the most confusing moments of life? It's almost his signature. When everything is dark, he whispers. But what no one tells you, and few dare to admit, is that answering this call can be costly. We're not talking about losing a night of sleep or skipping a party. We're talking about giving up everything: your home, your plans, your certainties, even what you love the most. Abraham is known as the father of faith, but what lies behind that title is much more complex, dark, and intense than sweet sermons usually portray. He didn't begin his journey in a temple or after a miracle, but in the midst of idolatry, in the spiritual chaos of Ur of the Chaldeans. And here comes the uncomfortable part. God's call didn't come with immediate rewards but with crisis, famine, silence, and even blood. Yes, blood. This video will show you the side of Abraham's story that many ignore, the side that involves human dilemmas, moral failures, almost cruel tests, and a dark spirituality that still pulses behind the scenes of true faith. Get ready to dive into a journey where every step requires more than courage. It demands trust in the invisible. And if you think faith is a neat and linear path, today your perspective may change forever. Before becoming Abraham, the well-known father of faith, he was simply Abram, an ordinary man in the midst of the spiritual chaos of Ur of the Chaldeans. A prosperous city, yes, but entirely given over to idolatry. Imagine living surrounded by temples, rituals, and gods made by human hands, while inside you, a restlessness begins to grow. Why would the God of the Bible whisper his divine call to just one man in a place filled with false altars? It's like hearing a voice in the middle of a storm of dissonant sounds, and still having the courage to obey. Abraham's story begins like this, wrapped in silence, rupture, and a mystery of faith that few are willing to face. When the Eternal called Abram, there was no signed contract, no detailed map. God simply said, "Leave your land, your relatives, your father's house, and go." Go where? That wasn't revealed. It's as if today someone told you, give up everything, delete your social media, sell your belongings, and head to a place I'll show you along the way. Sounds absurd, right? And yet, Abram went. He went because he sensed something greater than himself, an invisible pact, a dark spirituality, not of evil darkness, but the kind of darkness that exists before the dawn of faith. The spiritual life begins in the dark, and anyone who's tried to live by faith knows this. This first step of blind obedience is what separates those who merely read the Bible from those who live it. The call is not comfortable or clear. It shakes your structure, your identity, your plans. Abraham broke with everything: family, culture, security. And he did it trusting a God he couldn't see. This is the root of what we call faith in the Bible. Not a generic belief, but a leap into the abyss, trusting that God built the bridge as you step. And thus begins what would later become God's covenant with Abraham, a blood covenant that would change biblical history. But the road to that, oh, that road is full of tension. Abraham's obedience was not rewarded with immediate comfort, and here's a truth few dare to say: just because you're in the center of God's will doesn't mean everything will go right immediately. When Abram arrives in the so-called Promised Land, what does he find? Famine. That's right. Genesis shows that the first gift he receives for obeying God's call is scarcity. Can you imagine? You give up everything, trusting in God's promises, and right after, you have nothing to eat. Doesn't seem fair. But this is the point where faith in the Bible stops being poetry and becomes flesh and blood. With no other option, Abram goes down to Egypt. There, driven by fear, he lies about Sarai, his wife. Seems contradictory, doesn't it? The father of faith makes a moral mistake. And here lies a valuable point: even the great figures of biblical history fail. Even the chosen ones stumble. This doesn't cancel the call, it reveals the process. How many times do we act like this? We trust God on Sunday and lie on Monday to protect ourselves. The visual theology of the Bible shows that the journey of faith includes falls, setbacks, and poorly thought-out decisions. What matters is not getting stuck in the fall. This tension between promise and reality is what shapes the soul. The promised land didn't yet belong to Abraham, and he knew it. True faith walks on unfamiliar ground. And maybe that's where we learn the most, when we live in places that don't belong to us yet, but we believe they will one day. Practical example. When you study for a job that's not yours yet, when you treat your small home like a palace, when you plant in dry land because you trust the God of the Bible who promised rain. But what if this God decided to seal it all with blood? In one of the most mysterious scenes in biblical history, we find Abraham in a solemn and dark moment. God commands him to prepare a strange ritual, animals cut in half, laid opposite each other, forming a corridor of blood. It is there, among split bodies and absolute silence, that the sky darkens supernaturally. Sounds like a movie, but it's in Genesis 15. This is no ordinary covenant, it's a blood covenant, established by the Creator himself. And the most shocking part? Abraham falls into a deep sleep, and the only one who walks between the corpses is God. The covenant doesn't depend on man. The responsibility is entirely divine. This powerful image speaks deeply to those who felt like everything was falling apart. Marriages collapsing, dreams shattered, faith hanging by a thread. Have you ever felt that way? It's in this kind of scenario that God shows his covenant is stronger than our instability. It's not about deserving, it's about divine faithfulness. God's covenant with Abraham is the kind of commitment that stands even when the man is asleep. That brings hope, but also fear. Because this God is not tame. He is a consuming fire and darkness that covers the land before revelation. And here lies a secret of the dark spirituality of Christian faith. There is beauty in sacrifice, and light in darkness, but only for those who remain. God swears by himself because he knows our faith falters. The dark biblical channel reveals this less spoken side of faith, the moment the promise is sealed with blood before it is fulfilled. It's divine suspense. And while God walks among the dead, Abraham simply waits. Waits for the fulfillment of something he cannot yet see. But when the promise finally blooms, it comes with an unthinkable request.